Hi guys, my name is Mayana and welcome to MyoCore. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap up. So in the month of September I read 14 books. I did read the same book twice, so just in case I forget to mention that when I talk about the book, I read the same book 2 times in 1 month. Let me know how you feel about these glasses. These are blue light glasses, but I do need real glasses, and so I'm just trying to test out, like, I love the oversized look, but I'm trying to test out how they look on me. Also, I just got back from class, so if I'm a little out of it, yeah, that's why. Let's just get into my wrap up. So the first book that I read in the month of September was called All This and More, and this was like a choose your own adventure book. I ended up giving it like 3 stars because it was fine, like the story within itself. So basically it's a choose your own adventure, right? And it's about this game show, which I love reality TV, but as someone who loves reality TV, I feel like reality TV in books just doesn't translate well. But it's this reality TV show and you go on it and you just talk about how you want your life to change, and then your life does change. So the show was, it only had like 1 season and then it got canceled out of nowhere. So where the book starts off is the show is being picked back up and it has a completely new person, and you're just going through her life with her, and she's just making like decisions, like she's going in the past to make decisions, like things that she should have done in the past, things that she should do in the future. But I thought the story within itself was fine. Like I guess I can't really explain more than that because it really depends, like the storyline really depends on what you pick. It's like her going to, like, should she have went out to date her high school sweetheart, or should she have stayed with her husband that cheated on her, like those type of questions. And it was fine, it was really fun. You could read as many times as you want. The first time I read it, I literally, it was like, choose this if the character should do this. I chose something and then it was like, you failed. Like, that's not what they said, but that's how I read it. Basically I ended up at the end of the book. So it was like very fun because you could read it as many times as you want. After like the 3rd time I got bored though. I was like, all right, I had enough. But then I read Guillotine, and this is the first time I've ever read from this author, so I've never read anything from her before, so that was very interesting. I did end up giving it 2 stars. This one is about this girl who, basically this girl ends up with this rich family. Like I think she's going to like stay with her boyfriend's like rich family, and they end up like doing this like special event or whatever, and the staff ends up trying to kill them off. So it's basically like Ready or Not, and I just thought it was very goofy, and I think it would have worked better as a movie. And you can definitely tell that it was heavily inspired by Ready or Not. One thing I learned this month is that I just don't like, I like when books are inspired by something, but I don't like when they feel too closely to something, if that makes sense. Like this one just felt like, oh, what if we just took Ready or Not and that's it. Like it's literally almost the same plot. And then I read this book called It's Elementary. I started and scrapped this vlog where I was gonna be reading books about being in school, like back to school. Back in the end of August, I ended up finding this Goodreads list, because sometimes Goodreads like post a list of like books, like summer books or whatever, and so they had a back to school books, and it had to do with like teachers, parents, students, like whatever, just going back to school. And so I was gonna do like reading back to school books while going back to school, but I just ended up scrapping it because I find that my videos that aren't like rant reviews or video essays just don't do that well, which is fine. But I had already uploaded 2 videos that month that didn't do well, so I just didn't want to upload a 3rd one, which I guess in hindsight I should have, because I ended up not uploading the end of September anyway, so I guess I should have just did the vlog. But if that's something you're interested in, maybe I'll do it in November, because listen, if you've been following me for a while, you know my October is packed. I got a lot of spooky videos planned. I got themes for October, so November we can do the whole like back to school thing. So anyways, I read this book called It's Elementary, and I've read this author before. She wrote a YA book. She wrote 2 YA books actually, and I only read one of them and I thought it was fine. And this one I thought had a lot more potential, so this is her debut author book. In my review on Goodreads, I called it a debut romance. It's not a romance. It's sort of kind of a thriller, sort of kind of, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. I don't know why I'm like, what is something that's not a thriller but not, it's a mystery. It's a murder mystery. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is about this woman who is a single mom, and her daughter goes to this elementary school, and she is involved with the PTA, but they're kind of just like really hype and all this stuff, and she's dealing with being a black woman in the PTA, so she has to like you know, perform. Like she has to, like, you know, oh my gosh, hey girly, and she really doesn't want to do all that shit. She really wants to get her child and get the fuck up out of there. But now she gotta sit here and be like, oh my gosh, hey guys, because you know how it is, like when black women don't put on like this, oh my gosh, I'm super happy to be here, like all of a sudden you're suddenly intimidating even if you aren't. And so she's like, she ends up noticing, she's walking her dog one night and she ends up overhearing something, and she thinks that one of the moms in the PTA murdered the principal. So now she's going through this mystery of that. She also has a romance with one of the other parents, and oh my gosh, I love it. I love like the type of parent, like, oh, our kids both go to the same school type of romances, or like teachers working in like a school romance, which we need a romance like that. Like, why people have written like, oh, teachers fall in love with the parent, but why can't anybody write about two teachers working together? Somebody write that English teacher and art teacher dating. But yeah, this was fun, but it wasn't like, I didn't love it, so I end up, you know, whatever. The next book I read was Dungeon Crawler Carl. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So I actually had this as an ARC on NetGalley, and I actually bought this book when I went on my cruise at the end of summer because I was already reading it and I was loving it. So this one is about this, it's kind of hard to explain because it's kind of like a video game, but it's also like a reality TV show. So this is a guy named Carl who lives a regular everyday life. He's stuck with this cat, his ex-girlfriend's cat, and all of a sudden he ends up in this dungeon. Like the world is ending and he ends up in this dungeon, and now he's in this game like thing where he has to survive. You also can pick rather you want to be like on the reality TV show, because like aliens and stuff like that, and it's really cool and really unique. I think this is a very fun fantasy. Like, this is the kind of fantasy books that I like to read, something that's not like too much thought. Like, it's just something that's fun, something that's quick. Like, I mean, it's 600 pages, so it wasn't that quick. Like, it took me days to read, but it just felt so quick. And when I would sit down and read it, I would just get engrossed in it. And it's so funny because when I first started this book, I thought the writing was so fucking corny, I was gonna DNF it. And then immediately I was like, I'm about to DNF this shit. I read the next paragraph. I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually so fun. Like, this is actually so fun. So it's actually so funny that I was gonna DNF this, and then I was like, wait a minute, let's not do that, girly. So if you're into fantasy, I do recommend this. This was so fun. Then I read Got to Kana, which you can see my rant review for that. I read it a second time. This time around I gave it 2 stars because the first time I just ended up giving it 1 star because the writing was shitty. There was no editing done. Like, it was just terrible. And so this time I will say it wasn't as bad. Like, it was things that were edited. I saw it was something that was edited. It could have been edited a lot more, but something at some point was edited, and I appreciate that. And then I read Over the Woodward Wall, which I want to say Over the Garden Wall so bad. So this one is a novella, and this is part of the Middle Game universe, one of my favorite books of all time. And so this is the book that's in that book. So in Middle Game, there's a children's book called Over the Woodward Wall by Deborah A. Barker, and this is that book, but the book is actually written by Shawnee McGuire, which I think is so fucking fun. Like, to have your pen name, and like to have your pen name be the author of this book in your book, and then also actually write that, is just so fucking genius, and I wish more authors would do that. Unfortunately, I did think this book was fine. This one is about 2 kids who live on the same street, but they've never crossed paths, and so because they go to 2 different schools and they take 2 different routes, and then one day the route that one character takes is cut off, so they end up walking together, and even though they end up not walking together, but they end up coming across this wall and they just go over it, but then they're like, fuck, how do we get back? So it's like that. It kind of reminds me of Over the Garden Wall in a sense, and it's one of my favorite, Over the Garden Wall is one of my favorite animations ever, alongside Gravity Falls. So I checked this out because it kind of gave the vibes of both, but in the end I just thought it was fine. So then I ended up reading this book called Victim, and this one I gave 3 out of 5 stars as well. This is about this guy who learns how to play the victim complex. Like, I'm just gonna say it. He is Latino, and you go through like his life and how hard his life was. His dad was shot in front of him when he was a kid. His best friend was put in jail when he was also a kid, and his life was just really complex, and he ends up getting into like this, he's like an outlier in his community. Like, he's like a nerd. He doesn't really like, you know, do drugs or anything. Like, he doesn't sell drugs or anything like that. He's not like everyone else in his community, and he's very smart, and he learns to weaponize that to get into his dream college. And it also goes through like his dream college and how he fabricates things to make himself look like a victim. I really don't have anything to say for the book. Like, it was fine. Like, it was just, I don't know, like in my review I literally was like, I try to write a sentence for all of my reviews. I genuinely have nothing to say here. I don't have anything to say for the book. Like, it was short. It was like 200 pages. It was quick to read. It was just fine. Like, it wasn't amazing or anything like that. like that. So then I read The Bright Sword. This is by the author who wrote The Magicians, and even though it's my favorite show of all time, it's not my favorite book of all time. Like, I read the book for the first time last year and I didn't love it, and so I decided to give this a chance. And at first I was really liking this book. This is like a King Arthur type of book. It's about this guy who is going, I forget where he's going. He's going somewhere, and he get there and he finds out King Arthur's dead. Okay, and so I just feel like this book was too long for my liking. Like, this book is 600 pages, and at first it was really fun. It is a fantasy book, and it's one of those fantasy books that just, like, I don't know anything about King Arthur, and I think that's also a problem here. I did like reading about, like, the medieval times, and it's a Renaissance festival season, so it really helped me get into, like, the Renaissance festival, like, feel. But then after a while, I just got really bored. I would read this every night before bed, and then at a certain point I'm like, I don't want to read this anymore. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. Like, I don't know, everyone else loved it. A lot of my friends who I share similar tastes with in fantasy loved it, but maybe it's because I'm not really familiar with the King Arthur lore, and I didn't necessarily, I liked the characters, but I didn't love any of the characters, and I think that also was what it was. I also read Down the Drain, and this is a memoir from Julia Fox. And what the fuck, my cat is tripping. I'm not a huge fan of Julia Fox. I actually wasn't a fan of Julia Fox. I actually kind of hated her. I thought she was, like, very performative and just kind of annoying, and I thought she just said whatever she needed to say to get the attention of people so she could, you know, gain followers and stuff like that, because follower equals money. A YouTuber that I like, and she's not a booktuber, but she actually does these videos where she reads celebrity memoirs, and I just needed something to do while I was eating, so I just sat down and watched it because I love her videos. And I actually found out that I find Julia Fox very fascinating. She's had a very interesting life, and I actually have a newfound respect for her. I actually understand, because of her book, I understand why she is the way that she is, and I understand, like, just her personality a lot more, and why the girl lived through some trauma. She lived through some traumatic shit. So I have a newfound respect for Julia Fox. I actually quite like her now, and I feel really bad for judging her before. And that's my own fault for judging her, but I just was judging her based off of, like, social media, and I was just like, oh, it just kind of seems performative, like, whatever, like, she's just doing whatever. No, she's really like this. She's also been through a lot. Like, she's been through a lot. So I read it on my own because I just wanted to get, like, my own perspective of the book, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because it was fine. I don't really like the narrative it was told in. It was just a bit weird to me, but other than that, the book is fine. I read This Book Will Bury Me, and this is actually an arc. This book comes out next March, I believe. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This one was really fun. This one is about this woman who father died when she was really young, so she ended up becoming really fascinated with true crime. Her dad wasn't, like, murdering, he just died, and she becomes really fascinated with true crime, and the community really helps her. So she ends up being involved in this case where she helps solve it. So then she's invited to this community, this specific community in the true crime, where they actually, like, get together and try to solve things. And there's this mystery that happens at this school, at this college campus, where 3 girls are brutally murdered in their room, it's not a dorm, but in their apartment that's, like, slightly off campus. And so these sleuths are trying to figure out, like, what happened. I found it very fascinating. I don't like to interact with the true crime community. I'm very fascinated by true crime, but I find that the true crime community can get very spooky. It can get very weird. A lot of them are like this, where they think that they can solve the crime better than police, so they start, you know, dabbling in it. But I just don't like the community because I don't like how the victims, the family of the victims, are treated, and, like, a lot of the times they're suspected even though, like, they could be innocent or whatever. And I just don't like the true crime community. And ever since, like, true crime has become, like, a thing popularized on YouTube, I've kind of lost interest in it, because the way that people, like, fans interact with the community is just not for me. And so this one, I thought I was like a little worried of it, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was really good. And I didn't like In My Dream I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, but I did like her romance book. So this one helped me decide, like, okay, I do want to continue on reading her thrillers, because at first I thought I was just gonna have to read her romance books. She hasn't even wrote I don't think she has a romance book coming out this year, so I had no choice but to read this anyways. So then I read Evil in Me by Brahm. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This one is about this girl who ends up coming across, like, this demonic relic. It's a ring, I believe, and you put it on your finger, and then she ends up being possessed. Not really possessed, but kind of. And in order to get this ring off of her, she has to start a band so that she can get these people to chant this like thing so she can get this damn ring off her finger. And I thought it was very interesting at first, but then I just like it kind of just felt very goofy. Like when reading it, it just felt very like silly, not serious. And someone did suggest that, you know, if you read this book, you should read the audiobook. I had already finished it by then, so it's nothing I can do about it. But some advice for if you're going to the book, maybe check out the audiobook because they have songs in it. That's not why I thought the book was corny, by the way. It wasn't the songs, it was like literally the writing. Like, and I've read books by Brown before, and so it's just something about this writing just felt like very, like, she just felt very young basically. So then I read Graveyard Shift, and I read it twice. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. This book's not going to be for everybody, okay? This book was for me. So this book is about these 5 people meet up at the cemetery every night to smoke a cigarette. So the cemetery is right by the school. Some people go to the school, some people work at the school, some people work by the school. And so one night and these are people who don't know each other. Like, they don't interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. They just meet up at the cemetery to smoke a cigarette. And so one night, the main character is going to, you know, her nightly cigarette or whatever. She ends up seeing her other 2 friends there, and there's a hole dug in the cemetery, and she's like, what the fuck? And it's weird because nobody has been buried at the cemetery for a century, so there should be no hole at the cemetery. And so basically what happens is they end up Scooby-Dooing this shit and trying to figure out why the fuck there's a hole dug in the cemetery. And also at one point, 2 characters are like sleuthing and trying to figure things out, and they end up seeing this man dump something in the cemetery. So they're like, what the fuck? So they kind of team up together, and you get POVs of each one. I personally really love this one. I love the friend group. I think that Emma Rio is really good at writing like friend groups very early on. I find a lot of authors don't really know how to make you feel like this friend group should be like actually a friend group, but at the same time they're not a friend group. Like, they're just people who meet up at the cemetery, but they feel like a found family. My favorite trope is unlikely found family. So it's like people who you would never suspect to become friends becoming friends, or people who like don't like each other end up becoming friends because of a forced circumstance. Think of the Jumanji remake movie. Like, these are characters who came from different parts of their lives and they have no reason to be friends, but they end up being friends because of like this really weird circumstance. But yeah, I think that the mystery ended a little too soon. Like, the book literally just needed to be like 15 pages more. I think it just ended abruptly. But I gave it 5 stars because I loved it. I read it twice. I love the characters. This book is just very much me coded. It's not Dark Academia, but it takes place by your school. I really relate to 2 of the characters. One named Tamar and then one named Hannah. They both suffer from insomnia, but Hannah suffers heavily from insomnia, and I also suffer heavily from insomnia. And then Tamar, she went to school to be a librarian, and I don't know, I just really relate to them. And also, I'm in love with this character Theo. He's an asshole, but I love those type of characters. And he also like flirts with Hannah sometimes, and I just love these characters. Like, I hope that I get to see them again. Like, I fucking love this book. I know a lot of people gave it 3 stars, they gave it 4 stars. This book was for me. Like, does it have its faults? Absolutely, but I have fun, and that's all that matters. This might be the best book I read all year, and that's insane, but I loved it. And then lastly, I read Odd Spirits, which is a prequel to Evocation, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This is like a marriage in trouble type of thing. I really didn't give a shit. The pictures are beautiful. I loved it. This was sent to me by the company, so I'm very, very grateful. Once I read the story, I love these characters too. I love Moira's character. She's very much me, black girl who's into like magical shit. She loves reading and all this stuff, and I love seeing her and her husband. But I didn't care about the plot, if I'm gonna be real. That's really weird. So yeah, those are the 14 books that I read in September. I'm really excited for November. I have such huge plans. Let me know what books you read in September. If you read any of these books and you love them, if you have any plan, if I encourage you to read any of these books, like, let me know. Let's have a convo, you guys, you know. But yeah, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.